There's a lot more to CSGO than just shooting the enemy.
What? Has he gone mad?
Shut up and listen! CSGO is a game of power. A game of finding advantages and avoiding disadvantages. You always want to be in power. The sooner you internalize this, the sooner you can start improving your decision making. Learning to make good decisions is how you learn to control the outcome of the games and become a successful competitive CSGO player. Today, we're gonna focus on being in power by having number advantage and avoiding number disadvantage. Teammates alive versus enemies dead, and give you an idea of when to take fights and when to avoid them. When the risk is worth it and when it's not. The most important rule to remember for number advantage is that maintaining an advantage in a round is always more important than risking for a deeper advantage. This means that once you have the advantage, you want to minimize as many risks as possible so that your team can close out the round together. The pressure should always be on the team with the disadvantage to make the play and expose themselves to more errors. But don't take my word for it. Here are some ways this plays out in the pro scene. We're about to break down some rounds for you guys. So for the counter-terrorist side, if you have the number advantage, the general rule is to turtle up and defend. Here are some things to keep in mind next time you find yourself in this scenario. So ideally, you want to tighten up the defense by being closer with your teammates. You don't want to be isolated or alone at this point. You want to maintain the advantage. You want to be close to your teammates so they can help you. Make sure you avoid spots where you can't fall back safely if you make contact with terrorists. Avoid spots where you have the option to fall back if you see the terrorists coming. Avoid 1 versus 1s at all costs unless you're absolutely forced to take the fight. They are not worth the risk. If you lose the 1v1, you're allowing the terrorist team to equalize the numbers. If you're a terrorist and you find yourself at an advantage, the general rule is to group up and play the numbers. This means that you should retreat and play more passive to avoid the CT aggression. You want to avoid isolated positions in case the CTs decide to push your side of the map. You want to group up so if you and your teammate die, you can trade the kills and maintain the number advantage. And you also want to avoid 1v1 duels. They're not worth the risk when you're up numbers. If you find that your team is at a disadvantage, you want to equalize the numbers immediately and as safely as possible. Now here are some ways you can do that. So the idea is to make a safe play on one side of the map to equalize the numbers or gain information. You also want to force 1v1s as much as possible. They're worth the risk. So now some safe plays you can make with your team is to buddy up with the closest teammate and push to catch enemies either off guard or isolated. You also can flash for a teammate to push a certain area and get information. Now, note that the power play should almost never be made by the player who's solo on a site or on one side of the map. If the solo player dies, he'll give up way too much space and information and leave your team with a huge gap. This means that the site or the side of the map with the most players should be the ones making the plays. If you find yourself at a disadvantage, remember that the general rule is to equalize and make a power play. Now here are some ways you can apply this. You can make a play based on the information you have. If the player who died calls out where another player is, you can make a play on that player. You can also force duels against isolated players. Take any 1v1 duel that is given to you. These are absolutely worth the risk and equalization is always worth it. Or if you know that a site is weak, try to group up as fast as possible and overrun it before the CTs can group up and their defense gets stronger. Here we have a demo of Hellraisers versus North. In this scenario, the CTs decide to push a ramp early for an advantage, and they get it. As soon as they get the kill, the player in Palace immediately pushes into the site to try to equalize or gain an advantage for his team. He gets 1 kill, but is immediately killed by another player, making it now a 4v3 for the CTs. The terrorists are in a number disadvantage, so they're forced to make a play before the CTs can group up and close the round out together. So they decide to push connector, and as soon as they do, the player behind the smoke gets a double kill, but is immediately traded by the third player in connector. It is now a 3v1 for the CTs. They know exactly where the terrorist player is. the 2 B players go jungle, the 3rd player jumps on stairs from Tetris to fight with his team, and they close the round as a unit. In this scenario, the CTs decide to aggress A ramp, but lose 3 players within the first 15 seconds of the round. As soon as this number advantage is established, notice the terrorist reactions. The player in B apps falls back and groups up with his team, the 2 players mid group up and push connector, the guy in Palace hears the CT player on A push back into CT spawn, so that they now have full control of A site. Now, at this point, if you were the terrorist team, you think you've pretty much won this, right? You have a 2v4, it's easy. Wrong! Notice how quickly this round turns around as soon as they get sloppy with their decisions. They start taking unnecessary 1v1s and getting caught in isolated and exposed positions and immediately lose grip on this round they should have easily closed out. Think about how many times you think you've won a round because you have a huge advantage only to lose it to 1 or 2 players. Now think about how this should have gone differently if you were the terrorist team. In this scenario, a CT B player is picked off early by a T player. Now normally if this happens, it's a huge benefit for the terrorist team because they haven't committed to anything on the map yet. There are 2 things that are really important in this scenario. For the CTs, the window player watches his back for a bit and then immediately groups up with his teammate in B apps to try to equalize the numbers. The other thing to note here on the terrorist side is after getting the pick, the T player lingered around the B apps in a position that didn't allow him to fall back safely. He was super isolated and the CTs were able to equalize here. Because the CTs played it right and the Ts played it wrong, they super safely equalized the number advantage and immediately reset the round, increasing their chances of winning that round.
Welcome back to Who Wants to Be a Professional. I'm here with our contestant who has reached the ESCA main mark. Now, he'll be going for rank A. If he misses, he will go back down to main. Only 5 questions away from professional. Let's play. What should counter-terrorists do if they have a player advantage? Be aggressive for more advantage. Stay far from your team and find picks. Turtle and defend. Try to get a Zeus kill.
Oh. Well. I need to phone a friend.
Hello?
This is Humongous, host of Who Wants to Be a Professional. I'm here with your friend, and he needs your help with a question. You have 30 seconds to help him out, starting now.
Okay. Well, normally if you're a CT and you have a player advantage, you want to minimize the risk of dying by playing safer and more passive.
More passive?
You also don't want to die without your teammate being able to kill the person who killed you, so you want to be close with your team and make sure you can win the round together as a team.
Time's up. What is your answer?
More passive? Close with your team? That sounds like C. I'll go with C. Final answer.
C. Final answer. Is it correct? You are correct. You just ranked up to ESCA rank A.